Hello, my name's James. I'm a portrait photographer from Portsmouth in the UK. You've probably not heard of me, and I welcome you to this, the latest video on the Portrait of a Wrestler YouTube channel. And we are going back to portfolio reviews, and we are joined this week from Sacramento, California, by Mikey Nolan from Mikey Nolan Photography. I see here on his Instagram feed, Mikey Nolan Photography, you can see all of his work, some outdoor stuff, some famous names, lots of work with PWG there, but we've got a mixture of work. From the brief glance that I took over his submission of 10 images today, we've got a bit of a mixture of work, some wrestling but some outside of wrestling, so I'm excited to see that today. As ever, we're going to be looking at elements such as technique, composition, lighting, creativity, color processing, all of those sorts of things, and hopefully giving you some positive feedback to help take you and everyone's photography to the next level. And as ever, I've not seen these or done a deep dive into these, just scanned them on the download, so this is my first time seeing them, watching them along with you. So let's start off at image number 1 here, and we have a ringside image from Battle of Los Angeles on some sort of soundstage there. Now let's have a look at this. This looks like, I believe that's Bandido. I could be wrong. I'm a bit rough on who my naming of wrestlers here, but we've obviously got a very low angle here underneath the bottom rope, so we've got super close to the action. The timing on this is actually really nice, and let's have a look. It looks like some sort of flash photography's gone on there, because we've got a tiny little bit of blur just around some of the skin areas there, but I think that little bit of blur is helping tell the narrative, helping tell the story. The timing's perfect. Any lower and they start to go into those chairs, any higher and we don't really get the shape and the form, and that moment captured between ropes and between going into the chairs. Looks like an excessive amazing moment here as they go through a pile of chairs beneath them. I think that guy's face says it all. I'll be honest, but I like the attention of everyone looking on them. I actually really like the lights on the right hand side here. Normally I'm sort of a bit critical of things in the background, I suppose, that are creating a little bit of distractions, but we've got a little bit of star burst coming off of those, which is helping intensify the dramatization of the event. Where they've crossed in front of the logo here is a little bit of a shame. It's a tiny little bit distracting. It's probably a little bit more distracting that they're over the PWG logo at the top there, so all the red lettering there just behind our subject is just a little bit distracting. Few elements of the lights that are cropped in on this left hand side here, and the fire exit and all of that, all those little lights there could just be taken out a little bit, and maybe bringing that crop in on this left hand side a little bit here, so that the top corner of the frame has that rope coming out of it. Additionally, like the roof cavity at the top, where we've got some light bouncing up in there, possibly from the flash, I don't know, is just a little bit distracting. So where the elements of the ring and the crowd and everything are actually got quite a dark background, you've actually got quite a lighter background at the top, which is just a little bit distracting. So one of these rare occasions we're actually bringing in a vignette at the top there, just to darken that down a little bit, will bring us into the action at the center of it. But the timing on it, impeccable. The placement of yourself in there, and the fact that you've got the narrative of the people in the background, great as well. So good action ringside photography there. I'm sure the people who are involved in that movie are very pleased with seeing it at that moment. Oh, good blimey. Right, here we go. Goodness me. Right, so right, well, that guy's into it. What I like about, what I've always enjoyed about ringside photography, is turning the camera around to capture reactions of audiences and crowds. And I think this is one of those examples where that's obviously something quite. Oh, look at that camera there as well. That dude's camera's really cool. I like it. I once bought an old classic camera just because I like carrying it at weddings. It made me look, like I knew what I was doing. Man, I mean, I just don't know what's going on here, I'll be honest. The composition of it draws your eye into the middle of the frame. The intensity of the action that's actually unfolding, and I hope everyone got through it safely, of everything that's unfolding in the middle there is very dramatic. Very difficult to control your exposures here, particularly when working with flames. And what's actually happened here is that the flames have gone, they're so hot they've gone white hot, So we've lost all of our detail in the flame there, and it's all gone into this. You see where the yellows have started to sort of maybe go, they're just moving into that green hue a little bit, and maybe just a bit of control. You can select stuff in Photoshop there to sort of bring those back into a much more deep red, something a bit more bit more angry, I suppose, in terms of the color tonality. A good timing on the moment. I kind of like the referee's holding a beer. I'm sure that's part of the narrative of the match. And we got some lighter fuel coming in here. We've got the additional narrative of the arm here. That's quite nice. The angle, I mean, it's an awkward shot. I mean, it's because it's an awkward moment, isn't it? So I think maybe the angle, normally that's little Dutch angle, I'm not a huge fan of, but I think it's kind of, it comes across as quite indie on this. It helps tell that story of this sort of backyard style, I suppose. So I think the awkwardness of it works. It's just maybe just needed a little bit of control, a little bit of dedication there into the post-processing, but the timing on it, again, just like we said with the previous one, very, very good indeed. There we go, right, from one extreme to another, right? Okay. So we have back into portraiture here. So we've obviously taken a location portrait here. Looks like they're sat on the back of a pickup truck. We're working with outside natural light, which means all of the skin tones are going to be affected by the light all around you. If you're not controlling the flash or anything in the front, then you're literally working with where the light is. Now the light outside comes from the sun, but it bounces off lots of different elements. So if you're stood next to a white wall and you've got sun bouncing off that, it's going to come across white. If you're working in grassy, leafy areas, then the sun often comes back sort of like a little bit green, a little bit yellow, and sometimes that can be reflected a little bit in the skin tones. Nice little relationship here between the two of them. I think Mum could do with just leaning in just a little bit, just to sort of get a little bit closer, and the son could do with not looking up so much. We're looking a little bit up his nose here in this instance. It almost feels like the son just needs to be a little bit propped up a little bit, so he's not down here on the shoulder, so he's a little bit higher, just working in this area just above the shoulder there, which would mean Mum wouldn't have to look so far down, he wouldn't have to look so far up. Pay care and attention to your background, not so much the white pickup truck, but certainly this area of hay bale just sort of coming out the back of the neck just a little bit there. And I think maybe a tighter crop in here. Everyone sat there, the two people are sat there with their hands on the lap and just round, and no one's really, there's things you can do with hand placement that will help engage the narrative, that will help tell the story just a little bit more. It's just a little bit of care to posing on this one, but reasonably good control of the light in what looks like a bright sunny day, and that's sometimes quite a difficult thing to do, to get a flat light that isn't harsh and hasn't got deep shadow. So that's well attended to, and nice little relationship between the two of them. Oh, there we go. Mum to be with a little onesie that's been made, which is lovely. Good control on the wide aperture and a good control of the background. It's a tiny little bit bright in some areas where the whites are just sort of coming through, which is just a little bit distracting on this one, but it is a good control of the aperture. By knocking out the background, we draw attention naturally to the foreground. Quite a difficult one to sort of get right here in terms of like the position of Mum and Dad, and the I think this is nice the way that you've placed this on here so that we can see what's been made of the logo on top of the onesie. So that's nice, and that gives it real prominence in the foreground. Nice little kiss in there from Dad. He just needs to be down a little bit lower. Sometimes this works. If he's sat down out of shot, you can't see that he sat down out of shot, but we'll bring his head placement lower so that he can sort of almost lean up into a kiss, which would give him see a bit more of his face and give him a slightly more natural jawline, and might just get Mum to lean in a little bit more to help a little bit more of the narrative there. But once again, good control of outside lighting, and I'm sure like a lovely image for the parents to enjoy before they become, hopefully, maybe parents for the first time, maybe parents for the second time, maybe parents for multiple times. But if it's their first as well, then they've got a hell of a journey to go forward on in this instance, and this is a nice little memory of that. So here we go, two familiar figures from the world of professional wrestling. We have Okada and Omega. Okada on the left, Omega on the right. And I believe this is what we refer to as like the Hogan Rock spot, where they're maybe facing off in the ring and then looking at the crowd. So good timing on this one, getting the timing to look across at us here. pin sharp on the focus, which is pretty good. The lighting around the ring has allowed us to have a little bit of rim lighting just around the side, which has lit the side of the face and side of the hair, which is good. Just starting to lose a little bit of detail on Okada's face here on the left-hand side. Potentially maybe a bit of a wider crop on for me on this one. We're a bit midway, so we're starting to sort of crop through elbows a little bit, and I think just looking at it, either a tighter or a further away crop potentially might help. We're kind of betwixt the two here, I think, which isn't like I think it's not the best use of it. Your line at the top there, this you can see this white sort of grey line here, it's just off center. It's just sort of coming down at an angle, which is a little bit jarring. These white tones in the background could just be toned down just a little bit to really bring them off of the background, lose these little spotlights here and here. And then potentially, you know, it's something to work with there. I just think the crop is just a little bit not one way, not the other on that one, but good control over it and great use of aperture again to really bring them out of from the background pin sharp. Timing again, so we got the Bucks on ringside there with Cody and Kenny there. Great timing on the suplex. Kenny's legs are absolutely just, you know, they're straight up and down there, which is lovely. It's a good use of a wide angle lens. It's a tiny little harsh on this left hand side of the brightness there with the spotlight, so that's just a little bit bright compared to the rest of it. That's just, and with this additional light here, it's just a little bit distracting. In addition, I think like the shape of this rigging here is actually, it makes quite a nice V shape which frames the image at the top, but unfortunately there's not a lot going in on this right hand side here. The referee is lost completely behind that ring post, which essentially, what's the old red shoes there, is essentially a disembodied arm and a disembodied shoe. We can't see a lot more detail of him, and if anything that's a little bit distracting. I know that he's synonymous with old wrestling, but in this instance I maybe would have just worked in Photoshop just to lose him a little bit. Overall, the whole tonality of the whole thing is okay. It feels a little yellow in terms of color temperature, but that's okay. And I feel that the angle of it is just a little off. It just feels a little bit unstraight in terms, not straight in terms of the way that it's been placed there. But good timing on the moment. We're coming back to that again. Good timing on that moment. We got the timing. Just need a little bit of refinement in terms of like the tonality of the whole piece as a whole. Cassius Ono, or Chris Hero, or whoever his name is going by today. So I understand, I would assume this is in Reseda. I understand backstage at Reseda it's super tight, there's not a lot of room, and we can tell that we're working with the ambient light here, or certainly the fluorescent light that we have around. Got a lot of heavy grain around the picture. Sort of if we start to look around here, we can see that we've got these sort of reds and yellow high ISO grain. So I assume we're working on quite a high ISO here. Having said that, I actually typically again I'd say like, oh, there's some like this fire hydrant here and this fire hydrant here and this sort of sign here and all that sort of thing are quite distracting. But I think actually in terms of telling the story of shooting backstage portraits, I think that's okay. It's difficult to marry up the colours right with this indoor lighting that can't be controlled. It's difficult to get good colours, especially when you're working at those high ISOs. So in this instance, just for me, I would be looking at a black and white conversion on this and work with that grain to give us a real harsh image from backstage. Again, good timing, great subject, great connection with the camera, pin sharp on the focus. It's all good there. But because you've got this cluttered backstage area, use it. I think back in 2014, 2015, when I first started shooting backstage at wrestling shows, I think the first few shows I was desperate to try and sort of bring my own backdrop and make it look as professional as possible. And it became abundantly clear that there was never going to be enough room to do that. So I sort of did a complete 180 on that and tried to use all of the elements from the backgrounds as much as I possibly could. All of the elements from the backstage areas to sort of frame my subjects within doorways and to frame my subjects next to things that seemed out of place, and not to try and make everything look perfect. And I think we need to embrace that as much as possible to really sort of drive home narratives and drive home stories. Are these the Rascals? I'm sorry, I apologise, I don't know. I'm not that... Like I said, this is going back to what I said previously. This is kind of what I was saying with regards to this. Now again, the whole tonality of it is quite yellow. It's good timing on that. You get a real sense of feeling and attitude from these two guys in terms of their personalities, which I like. Good control again. There seems to be just maybe a single maybe on camera flash or a single flash somewhere behind that's just sort of shooting into this scene here. I love the cluttered background. Again, I actually really like it. I think it's nice. These two lines coming out the top of the head are a little bit distracting. But again, taking an image of champions in what essentially looks like it amounts to a canteen is actually really nice. And again, you got a habit of these little angles that you're taking. I kind of like them. Look at a black and white conversion again. And I think with their skin tonality, that would really sing, because we've got very different skin tones there between the two tag team partners. And I think maybe a black and white conversion there would really work. Timing again. Let's wrestling, God bless. It's good. There's a lot of faces in here. I actually think like a tighter crop might work. The faces on this side, I mean, let's just have a look at them. The faces on this side are fine, but where you're on a wide angle lens, they've started to distort. The ring ropes are distracting them, and they're also overexposed, the ring ropes. Plus, they're not all completely pin sharp. Some of them come into darkness, and it's just a little bit obliterated. Now, let's just compare that to the faces on this side. And the clarity, and the story, and the fact that you jump from one to the next, and the fact that people have got their phones up at the back, and this dude over here, and this guy down here, and all of this wonderful stuff that's sort of going on. It really tells a story. And I think maybe on this one, like a slightly tighter crop might just eliminate this bit on this side here and draw our attention to that bit on the other side to really tell that narrative of the fans again. It's another time where like the action in front is part of it, but the fans really, because for whatever reason I don't think we're on the widest aperture here, so we've got detail in the fans in the back. I think that's yeah, I think that's that really tells the story of being fans at a show, which I like. It's just a little bit, it's almost like a story of two pictures, and I think it doesn't need the whole of that side to really tell the narrative there. And our last picture now. What? Let's go. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but let's go back to fans again. And just great. Jeff Cobb there. We got Excalibur on commentary. There's more fan faces. Oh man, I assume that's Sammy. It's a panda, so it must be Sammy and Jeff Cobb there. Again, it's a story of fans. It's well framed. It could be better framed, and by that I mean is it's just a bit lopsided again. So that top here, as we see, let's just have a look at that top line now, just bring in a straight line. You can see how the top framing sort of dips beneath, and I don't think that's too much of a problem, but what you've got here actually is a really nice frame. So you'll see this top area here, and Sammy's foot just comes beneath it here, and that acts almost as in a picture frame. So we have foreground of the guys here in front of the frame, midground of the action going in here, and then almost background of these people on the commentary table and everyone behind the frame. Again, the skin tones are a little yellow because we're shooting in this arena with this sort of harsh fluorescent light, tungsten lighting, sorry. Again, you're fighting against, you know, lighting that isn't brilliant, but you've caught something on with, you know, excellent timing, and it's cluttered. And there's things you take out, like the cameraman in the background and the little trophy coming out of the top of his head and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, it tells the story of, I guess, PWG, particularly, you know, Bowler is a snapshot in time, isn't it? Of this tournament where indie wrestlers used to come and really, you know, set the world on fire. And like, I guess, if we talk about wrestling for a little bit, like ECW in the mid to late 90s, this was ECW for the following generation, and it comes and goes. I think this is a lovely shot. Like I said, technically there's things you could change about it, but I think this is one of the strongest ones of the set. And yeah, thank you very much for sharing it. So there we go, that was the images of Mikey Nolan. You can follow him on the Instagram, on the Twitter and the Facebook. If you would like a portfolio review, you can get one. You can email me, portraitofawrestler@gmail.com, and we'll send you all of the information. Click like, click subscribe, most importantly, to this channel, and we'll continue to try and put up a portfolio review every week. And as ever, all the very best.